Here's another look at the pieces. I know that I have a lot of redundant photographs, but like I said, I want to take a whole bunch of them at a time, because maybe somewhere down the line I may need to see this little piece right here, or I may need to see this little number up here, or I may need to take a look and see how this fits in right here. Who knows? Or how many splines there are on that shaft right there. And I like playing with my camera. As far as I'm not trained with a camera or the Sony Handycam. I just film what I like to film, and I talk the way I talk. I don't edit anything. I don't know how to edit. I just put it on to YouTube, and it is what it is. It's art. But these Fongier cranks are really nice. I like them. But when you if you're going to put one in, always remember to get some new bearings. You can get those at Bike Bandit. As long as you're going to spend all this time doing this, then go down and spend the $12 a piece for the bearings. Now, people have asked me, how can you tell a spun bearing? And sometimes they spin, especially when you get some bike that's been in storage. No, it's been on a farm for a long time, and mopeds aren't really kept up. So you get a lot of dirt that comes in here, it gets down in here, and it gets in here, and sometimes you'll find dirt down here. It's not really a big deal because you're going to change the crank and the bearings. Well, what happens is, on a normal motorcycle like this is the outer race right here. These are your bearings. This is your inner race. Now, they're called races because the bearings race around the inner race and they race around the outer race. Now, where it says Japan and all this, this bearing is press fit with about, it's a little tiny bit bigger than the aluminum. And as it gets hot, everything expands a little bit and it sticks. This outer bearing race should not move at all. Your crank fits right in this inner race, and it fits in the same way the outer bearings fit in the aluminum. They're pressed in, which means that when the crank is in, this piece right here is basically like it's welded onto the crank. So the crankshaft and the inner race revolve around the bearings, and this outer part stays where it is. Now, when someone says we got a spun bearing on these, this is what it means. It means what happens is you get some dirt or something in the bearings that cause them to seize up for whatever reason. And if the bearing seize to the outside, what happens is your crank wants to turn this inner race, so it turns the inner race, it tries and turns the bearings won't turn, so the torque will actually spin the outer race right here. That is a big no-no. Now what happens, this is your symptoms for that. And everyone should get themselves a little 0 to 400 degree single cylinder head gauge. This will really help you, because if your air-cooled engine goes from 250 degrees to 450 degrees in about 3 minutes or 2 minutes, then you've got a spun bearing. And there's no way to fix them except tear them down and replace them. And I glue mine in with JB Weld, and it's worked perfect on that. Some of the older pieces are not in the best shape that I have. But that's what it meant by spun bearing. And here's the crank again, and what I'll do is I take the crank and I'll run it all the way around on this one side to make sure it doesn't hit. Then I'll take the crank and put it on the other side to make sure it doesn't hit. Then I will put the two sides together and put a couple of bolts in them, and I will spin them again. And if there's any type of clearance issues or snagging, then I take it apart and I fix it. Now when you do your stroker, you won't touch down here on a 50 millimeter on this base right here. You will, if you look very closely, you'll see just how much meat is taken off. You can see right here against this, it's like a millimeter, something like that, all the way around. Now if you're going to do a 52.5 millimeter, and I would suggest you don't do that unless you absolutely know what you're doing, because doing it by hand is very, very tricky, because you get very close to these bolts, and with a 52.5 crank, and what happens is you use a 50, between a 50 and a 52.5 millimeter in diameter crank. From here over to here, you'll gain 7 cc's. So if you're going to build a normal 114 cc engine, with a bigger crank, it'll boost it to 120. But with a bigger crank, the outer crank weights are thicker. Okay, they're thicker like this. So they'll give you a special set of thin bearings, and then you'll have to cut down this base right here for the bearings to fit in, and it's really tricky. Really tricky. So that's all cut for a 50 millimeter. Then I take off a little more on the intake, let it breathe a little bit easier. Now here is where what I've done here is I've started to take off the front so the bigger cylinder will fit here and the back, and then I still have to cut out this boost port in the back here, and also these things have basically got to go here, 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 and here, so that your piston doesn't hit them. Remember, the bigger the crank diameter, the farther up it's going to go in the cylinder, and the farther down it's going to pull the piston. And you don't want your piston skirts to hit here, here, here. You want to make sure that everything is free flowing and there is no catches or problems, because once you fire that up, and if it hits on something, it'll just explode your piston. Okay. Here's where the plug goes in, right here and down to here. You want to have that plug, and that'll keep your case integrity. No, that's not very good. So now we're getting into the water cooled part right here. This is a Charmo 54 millimeter kit. It comes with the cylinder, the head, the wrist pins, the clips, things for the exhaust, your wrist pin bearing, and this black thing fits underneath the grommet fits underneath here. The red nitrile deal it'll fit right on the very top edge here, and the 4 little red things will fit right in there to keep the water out. And it's kind of tricky to do, but it's fun. I mean, it's a really good kit. It's standard 114 cc, or you can put a bigger crank in and get 120 like mine. So I use a 50 millimeter crank and a 54 millimeter cylinder, and I can get 114 cc's, which is, it's a hell of a lot of juice for that little motor. There's my dummy bearings. You can see they're not done real well. This Charmo, and I've had a number of them. I like them because they have a huge exhaust bore, and remember, this is your rear boost port here. This is your front, and that boost port has got to be cut out on your block in order to get a real good breathing. And then you'll get as you can see, this is the stock base gasket right here, and we'll go into talking about base gaskets, but this has been cut out. You can see the dark lines here to fit underneath the cylinder into the base. Here's another look at it. The water comes in one side on the right side of the engine if you're sitting on it, and what you can do is the head can go on 2 or 3 different ways. You can have the water go out off the top anyway, so you can see the brass plug there. You can have that go off any way you want. What I've found the best way for me is to have the brass plug aimed forward on the cylinder head here. Then that'll let the water go right out the front. Here is the inside of your transmission case, and these are the easiest damn things in the world. Easy. This is the outer case, which you can take off the motor itself. It's not part of the motor. It has a couple of washers here and here, and the gears go here and here. This is your output shaft for your transmission gear. And like I was saying, on the other part of using your crankshaft tools is you can start your shaft on this side, go on the other side and use your tool, and you can pull the shaft through this fitted bearing right there. Oh, wait, where was that? Okay, now we're getting down. Now the next video, you'll see all the cutting that I've done. And I hope these videos, I was going to charge for them, but I'm not going to. So I was going to rent them out, but I'm not going to. You can see on the next video, you'll see how close we get. Remember, if you go and cut through there, you could lose case pressure. You don't want to do that. Okay, next video.